This week we're going to make some colour changing lip balm. Pause to read, and the formula for this is on my Patreon. That's linked below. Although I'm using a pigment that I got elsewhere for this video, you can now buy this from a reputable source. It's available from TKB Trading in the USA. This video isn't sponsored by them, I just recommend it. So this is super easy. We're just making a basic lip balm and adding the pigment to it. So what I'm using is refined cocoa butter. If you want to use unrefined, you can. You'll just have that chocolatey smell. And I'm using that because obviously it's moisturising, it's very good for the lips. And then I'm putting that to the side for a minute to sort out my pigment. Now, as I said before, I got mine from another supplier as a sample because I was desperately looking for some. And then TKB started selling it. So you should go off to TKB and buy their pre-dispersed pigment because it's a lot easier and less messy to work with. So what I'm doing now is creating my own disbursement by putting a little bit of the powder into some castor oil. What I've done in the formula, which is on Patreon, is give you the percentage amount to use of the TKB pre-dispersed colour. So if you go and buy that, the formula will be correct. But what I'm doing is just preparing mine in advance here by just adding my percentage of powder to a little bit of the castor oil in advance, just so I can be sure that it mixes very well and it'll disperse in the final product. And that's what it looks like, kind of a peachy colour. I believe the TKB Trading disbursement looks similar. When it's actually in the lip balm, you won't see a colour, it'll look normal lip balm colour. Anyway, back to phase A, as well as our cocoa butter. We're going to add some jojoba oil because this is particularly good for the lips. I am going to do a video on how to find out what ingredients do and their functions and what they're good for later on and how I research them. That will be coming up this week, hopefully, so you'll know how to research your ingredients properly, because just going on Google will sometimes present lots of misinformation. So I'll get into that in another video. Anyway, the next ingredient is stearic acid. You don't need stearic acid in a lip balm, but you will notice a huge difference if you use it. It helps to harden it, and it also gives it a really luxurious, creamy, silky feeling when you wear it. So I do highly recommend it. Obviously the amount I've used in my formula on Patreon is the amount that I like, but you can adjust this to your liking and just have a play around with these ingredients because they're all customizable. After that, I'm using candelilla wax. You can use beeswax if you prefer, but I tend to formulate vegan as most people tend to prefer it now, and this just hardens and creates a nice barrier on the lips, so it's a good wax to use. And then lastly, I'm just adding the remainder of my castor oil that wasn't mixed in with the pigment, and then we'll just give this a little mix together to incorporate and put this in a water bath, which is 1 to 2 inches of water in a pan, and then that just controls the heating process to make sure that your ingredients don't overheat. While that's doing its thing, we can work on the rest of phase B, which is our pigment, and to that we're going to add our vitamin E. I got this clear vitamin E from TKB Trading. It doesn't really matter if it's clear or not, I just had this to hand. And then this is where you'd add a flavour oil if you want one. I haven't in this, but the formula on Patreon does include one, so you'll have the percentage for that. Use any flavour oil you'd like. Then when this is all melted down, take the temperature of it, ideally with an infrared thermometer because it's more accurate, and just wait until that's cooled down to 40 degrees before you add your cool down phase. And then what I'm going to be doing is pouring into my little twist up lip balm tubes, which I put in this little holder thing that I got from Amazon. It's really handy because obviously these fall down so easily when you're pouring them, so this just helps hold them in place, and you can also scrape off any overflow, which I always get when I pour. It just helps to prevent wastage and make them nice and neat. So when that's cooled down, I'm pouring a little bit of the melted liquid into my Phase B ingredients just to disperse it properly and mix it thoroughly, and then I'll pour it back into my main container and make sure everything is thoroughly combined together, and then we can pour into our mould. I'm not normally quite this terrible at pouring, but I was doing it with my left hand because I was recording. So yeah, it's normally a bit better than this, but you get the idea. And then any overflow just goes over the rest of the mould, and then you can scrape that off when it's all set up. Now we're going to set this up in the fridge. I always use a dedicated fridge or freezer to set things up because you don't want this getting near food because it's a cosmetic product. So I gave that about half an hour, 40 minutes, and it's all set up nicely for me. And as you can see, I can just scrape off the excess here, and then I can remelt that gently and use that to create another one if I wish. So I've got a bit of excess in a tub over there, I'm not wasting any. And then you just pull them out, and it's that simple. You've got your lip balms ready made. So as I mentioned before, colour changing pigment works by way of pH. So it's relatively clear or non-coloured in an acidic pH or no pH, and then it gets more vibrant pink the more alkaline the pH. So to activate it, when we apply the lip balm, the pH of the moisture on our lips triggers the pigment to turn pink. So right now, if I just apply it to my arm, you won't see that much difference. But if I add some water and then apply, you'll see it gets pinker. And the more wet it gets, the more it's getting alkaline, therefore the more pink it will turn. Also, the more pigment you use, obviously the pinker it'll get as well, but there is a max usage rate, so please check that beforehand. I'll also mention this pigment does stain a little bit, so be prepared, and when you try and wash it off, obviously you're adding more water, so it just gets pinker. So I'd say a little goes a long way. So you may not even want to use as much as I have included in this formula, but we're talking like point something of a percent, like you really don't need much. And then you can label, and that's your finished product. I do also have a formula for a colour changing lip gloss on my Patreon if you're interested in that, and for a clear lipstick that this can be included in as well. That's also in the ebook that I released on lipsticks a little while ago. I hope you like this. If you want the formula, it is on my Patreon, and that gives you a PDF to download of it as well. And like I said, I wouldn't buy this pigment anywhere other than a reputable supplier, because you can't guarantee the quality of it otherwise. So if you do want it, I suggest you do go to TKB, because at the moment they're the only ones I know who are carrying it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, go join the Patreon if you want the formula, and I'll see you next time.